Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me and my books and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com as well as on Amazon. I have a brand new guest. I have Cristin Badal on. She's going to expose the systemic corruption and legal abuse she has endured in her divorce case, Badal versus Badal, in Morris County, New Jersey. Cristin will detail how her estranged husband, Brad Badal, weaponized the silver bullet divorce strategy, a premeditated legal attack designed to strip her of her parental rights, financial stability, and dignity. She will also discuss the role of unethical attorneys, judicial misconduct, and political collusion in perpetuating this injustice. Cristin will educate all of us on the warning signs of the silver bullet divorce, the psychological tactics of abusers, including DARVO, which is deny, attack, reverse, offender, and the steps victims can take to protect themselves. Finally, she will share her faith in God, how it has sustained her through this battle, and how she's now advocating for nationwide reform to protect families from this growing epidemic. And I'm so glad to have you on, Cristin. You
Thank you for
know,
having me, Marianne.
oh, I'm so honored to have you on. We were talking earlier. What can you tell people about the warning signs potential victims should watch for before a divorce even begins?
Thank you so much again for having me and for that lovely intro and the opportunity to talk about this and hopefully save other potential victims of the, I like to call it the silver bullet divorce strategy, a term that's not commonly known to all, certainly not to me, and newly acquired firsthand experience. But the silver bullet strategy and the warning signs, as we discussed, can certainly differ from circumstance, from individual to individual. But in all cases, there's very likely going to be gaslighting, triangulation. Obviously, if you're married to someone, hopefully you can detect some change in their demeanor and their behavior. In my particular case, it was liquidation of assets, just a sort of different feel and approach, a lot of dishonesty, a lot of gaslighting, a lot of sudden meetings, and new lawyers being brought on. I'd even say researching or just, any new interest that your spouse is showing in legal affairs or local
Mhm.
politics or anything of that nature. Certainly, I would say bank accounts,
Mhm.
watching purchases, watching liquidation, things like this. And I personally just experienced a very marked sort of distancing and something I just couldn't put my finger on, but it was marked by just the impression of withheld personality, less truth telling and so forth. Just, a change that suggests that something's underway. And another thing is, a lot of defamation and slander, sort of attempting to isolate you, attempting to convince you that people in your life that you've known for years, family, friends, colleagues,
Mhm.
they're not really your friends, or they're out to get you, or just really turning you against everyone but the abuser,
Mhm.
doing everything they can to isolate you and to create an illusion while something deep seated feels wrong, telling you that they're the one that you can trust and creating the impression that they're the only one you can trust. And you
Mhm.
just slowly find yourself sort of like distanced from everyone around you, feeling isolated. It got to the point where I really never spoke to anyone but my husband. And even though I had Jill Jones Soderman of the foundation for advocacy that I work with, explained it to me as though it's easier sometimes to believe that we are the problem in circumstances. So one of the reasons that people will fall victim to this DARVO gaslighting, abuser victim mentality is not necessarily a failing or a weakness within yourself, but that when you love someone and they isolate you from everyone else, the tendency is to find fault within ourselves because we we only have control over ourselves. So, hypothetically, I have the ability to fix me where I might
Mhm.
not have the ability to fix someone else. So we tend to come inward. And if you notice any of these things occurring to you, or if they ring true, I'd hop on the web, I'd reach out, I'd do something, because it's in hindsight's 2020, but you will see it
Oh,
loud
yes.
and clear. And unfortunately, a lot of people see it when it's already begun, or something even worse has happened.
Or even too late.
Too late, yeah, certainly too late. So yeah. In my
Yeah.
case, it's let's see, my my husband, uh you find out a lot of things in as you go along, but it's been since November 4th of 2022 was the launch date of his attack. His weaponized silver bullet divorce occurred on November 4th. I'll never forget the day. And
Mhm.
then, interestingly, I find out the retainer agreement, the payment in the contract was signed uh, with the disgraced attorney that's representing him exactly 1 month prior on October 4th. So a lot of things will happen like that. If you
Mhm.
see changes in your bank account or what have you. But so it's been a long time for me. It's almost approaching 3 years, and I definitely
Oh.
don't believe it's too late, because I intend to fight all the way.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So in my case, I'm considerably younger than my spouse, so I keep thinking, if nothing else, I'm going to wait you out. I'm
Yeah.
never going anywhere. I'm never leaving my child. I'm never giving up. And I plan to be here and help others. So,
Right, especially when there's a child involved and they expect you to fight harder when there is a child involved.
yeah, they definitely do. And, I know you've worked very closely with a lot of people. Like I said, you're one of my heroes. I've been watching
Uh-huh.
you, for the 3 unfortunate years that this has happened, and without people like you, I'd be lost. So thank you again. But a lot of the people like David Weigel from the Warrior Foundation, and Richard Luthman, who reports on corruption, collusion, politics, how it interrelates with family court. I mentioned Jill Soderman. These people have have shown me that you can't really see this from the beginning. But essentially, these courts have been there for quite a while.
Hmm.
They've been doing this circus and this procedure for a lot longer than you realize. So when we walk in the door, like I did, a law student, so my husband used to tell me that I was too much of an idealist. I never understood how things worked, and I certainly think that he may
Oh.
have been right about that. But we don't recognize that this is all designed for you. So things like your child, or your name, your reputation, your assets, everything you've achieved in life, these are things that are weaponized against you, and very strategically, because everyone has a breaking point.
Hmm.
To some extent, it's almost been 3 years for me, and it's amazing that I'm upright. When people are using your child against you, but and people stay strong for a very long time. I know you've discussed Monica Ciardi, and a lot of the very well-known victims that are out there. But eventually, everyone has a point that you can push. And these courts and these systems, they're designed well. They're very strategic, and that they will use these things, and they will push as far as they need to go,
Hmm.
until you do sort of end up, getting very, very upset. Everyone has an emotional state when it comes to your children. What's more important? There's really nothing more important. So they know that if they keep pushing and they keep using your children, and it will get more and more. So if you go into the mindset where you recognize that this is all strategically designed, and that getting upset, getting shocked, getting angry, it's really just a waste of your time. The
Hmm.
best thing that you can do is recognize that it's been planned long before you got there. They're very well skilled, they're very practiced. It's a methodology, it's
Hmm.
perfectly employed. The better off you'll be. And unfortunately,
Yeah.
I compare it to throwing a hamster on a hamster wheel. You're the hamster, and they're
Hmm.
going to throw you on that wheel, and eventually they're going to run you until you're exhausted. So the best thing that you can do is treat it like a long, what is it called?
Marathon.
Not, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I'm like the one where you run the long distance versus the sprint. And take care of yourself. Like, be healthy. Have people that you can talk to. Have healthy sleep habits, and because you're in it for a long haul, and you're up against very seasoned players.
Sociopaths.
sociopaths, narcissists.
Hmm.
These people are they're engineered for this
Hmm.
genetically,
Yeah.
and they, you know what, you're walking into the Olympic arena of personality disorders, and it is. We'll try every strength that you have and every weakness as well. So.
Yeah, and they don't know when to stop. I found that the opposing attorneys, they will, they're the ones driving the case. And they're the one doing the continuances. Yeah, I never wanted to go in there, but when you have a personality disorder that you're dealing with, you get dragged into it, whether you like it or not. Some people will say, well, you don't have to go in there. Oh, when you have a personality disorder, you're going in there, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, and the clarity that's come after all this time, and trust me, I have raged and I have been infuriated and I have, beat my fists against this process. But when I finally started to come to understand how the system works, and again, I went to law school like sweet and believing in, justice and the Constitution and all that fun stuff you see on, that we're raised to believe is in the American ideal jurisprudence in our country. And it's still there. It's definitely still there. Unfortunately, we got to clear out a lot of these bad actors. But at the end of the day, when you come to realize that, I was speaking to a victim the other day who said, they were very confused. It was from their first or second appearance in court, and they walked in and, they thought, well, this is my lawyer who I've paid thousands of dollars. There's the gal, here's the evaluator, here's the opposing counsel. But they were all sort of hanging out, and just it looked like a good time. And they thought, is this normal? Unfortunately, the thing that creates the environment that keeps everyone coming back, and the lawyers that you're talking about, is always follow the money. So where is the money? So ultimately, what holds the system together, and the worst experience, the worst stories that I've heard, or actually, I forget the name of the attorney. There's an attorney in Clifton, New Jersey, who they featured on a Hollywood report called The Divorce Corp. So they have this guy on recording, and they publish it. The divorce attorney, top firm, top attorney. They have him on the phone saying, when these people walk through the door, we size you up. What's in your bank account? What's in your retirement account? What kind of car are you driving? What kind of purse are you carrying? What do you have to offer me? And then as soon as you leave, I call the opposing counsel, and I find out what they've deduced. And then together we schedule a date, to meet at the Mercedes-Benz dealership, and we get our new car. So, and I've heard stories of prosecutors, attorneys, judges, all sitting around, like almost like they sit down and they take your assets, everything that you're worth, your earning capacity, what can you sell, what do you possess, and they come up with a whole figure. And then they strategically coordinate and design your divorce around how long it will take to bleed you of that. And then, they involve, and everybody feeds off of this. They're like a bunch of little vampires. You got the cottage industry of the forensic accountants, the private detectives, the visitation supervisors, the mental health evaluators. I mean, you'll see judges across the country handing out business cards in the courtroom in your divorce. And it all just kind of, then you get the bar associations, they're hosting events. But who are the events hosted by? They're hosted by these cottage industry bottom feeder, or no, I shouldn't
Yeah,
call them bottom feeders.
that's what
These
I was going to
people,
say.
it's insane. I think
Right.
it's I don't even remember the numbers, but I highly recommend. There's a Divorce Corp. There's a couple of. It's a little bit dated now, but the numbers and the size of the monetary power of this industry is astonishing. So,
Mhm.
we have it. It's been almost 30 months, and my husband and I, we found ourselves in front of one judge. He was like, "What in the world is going on here? There are 150 filings, and you guys don't know if this is a divorce or custody case. You're gonna have one ruling, and yet you have 33 orders. What in the world?" He was like, "You know what? Each and one of you, of course, he's a part of it too, but if each one of you made $50,000, you would have been out of here in a week." And the
Mhm.
truth of the matter is that my husband and myself built very, very large, successful companies together and amassed considerable wealth. So we're in it for the long haul. There are people that are married for 8 months. that are getting divorced for 8 years. It's insanity. So, and then you had actually David, Mr. Weigel from the foundation on your podcast not too long ago, and he said he was talking about the same concept. He mentioned, my wife. I'm not going to say anything. She's not perfect. I'm not perfect, but I will say this, and it really stuck with me because I've been saying it to people as well. You have to remember that no matter which Satan you married, and I certainly think mine's the number one bad husband divorce situation, but you have to remember that they're different people when this begins. They're also victims. So they walk into these attorney offices of like the guy that I'm talking about who's sizing you up, and you get a cash cow and it's just, you lay it on thick. They lay it on thick. And it's like, they talk you into it. If you don't do this, you're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your kid. You're going to lose your life, your assets, everything you've got. If that doesn't work, then it's, well, you know what? Does your spouse drink? Do they have any weaknesses? Is there anything that CPS is going to come in and take your kids both away from you? So they do play on the other side, almost to the point, and if they need to, it's a threat. You walk out of their office without signing over your life savings. And, so to some extent, and I've watched my husband, I have no idea who he is anymore. I would say he was a pod at this point, because where we began and where we ended, while he was a butthead then, he's unrecognizable now. And that's the power of these attorneys. They're very skilled at what they do. This is not their first rodeo. So that's another thing I would really watch for. I would highly recommend to anyone, even if you do, get the silver bullet, or, how your disaster happens. And if you don't see it coming, immediately before you call a law firm, and the more expensive, the worse it's going to be, the more, the more affluent and successful the attorneys, the more likely, I hate to say that, but I would reach out to other resources first. I really would. And that's the objective behind like my advocacy group. I want to be a free resource where people just come and say, it's like divorce 101 from the second that you step in the door. Don't fall down the rabbit hole like everybody else does. And they know how to make you do it. You may be the smartest person in the room, but you know what? They start playing with your kids and your mind, and there isn't anyone that can hold out forever, and they're aggressive. They played the game before. They see you coming a mile away, and they wrote your strategy before you sit down in that room. And
And
also
they're,
working, I'm sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you go ahead.
I was just going to mention, another thing that I say to people that I feel terrible, and it makes me so sad to say, is that I have worked in the court during, my school years, and people, it's a horrible thing to admit, but a lot of these orders and decisions of the court are prepared before they ever even see you. They're
Bingo.
written before you sit down. Yeah. So
Definitely. Yeah. And it's really strange when you get the order the next day. So they had
mhm.
this thing written up in the morning, then they talk to you guys in the late morning, and then they pop it in the mail.
Yeah,
And when
it's
really you should be getting it 3 days later. Like my silver bullets were she's mentally ill and she's alienating the kids from the father. So the perpetual liar called that out and they just ran with it.
I have to say that, it's probably given me so much clarity to work with these other advocacy groups and foundations, particularly when you say the word parental alienation. First of all, I have to say that mental instability, substance abuse, alienation, those are the three.
Mhm.
If you're heading into divorce, look out for them, because it's very likely that
Yep.
somebody's planning them for you. But I I work so closely with Miss Soderman, and the term parental alienation, it's become like whenever I hear it, I think of what I've learned. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but the term was actually coined in the early 90s by a gentleman, a very celebrated, very, very well respected psychoanalyst, medical doctor. And his name was Richard Gardner. And
Mhm.
he wrote an entire psychoanalytical like thesis, and coined the phrase parental alienation, with regards to children involved in extreme sexual abuse by family members.
Mhm.
And these children, he argued, were actually the perpetrators. It didn't matter how young they were. The perpetrators are the children who actually set the parents and the caregivers up. So it's literally the adults are the victims and the children were the perpetrators. And because of that, we cannot allow these parents who really just victims. They're not sexual abusers. They're not sexual predators. They're really victims of their own children or their own
Mhm.
family for whom they provide care. And so we can't allow them to be alienated by the system, which is
Mhm.
the most, I don't even need to go on how psychotic and asinine that is. But
Mhm.
the strange thing that most people don't know about Mr. Gardner and his brilliant alienation theory that's used so freely now, that he towards the end of his life, went completely insane, and hopefully, I'm imagining like a shock of conscience got to him. He ended up stabbing himself in the neck. I want to say 19 times to commit suicide, and then like disemboweled himself or something. Really a gruesome, horrendous death. And the thing is, he was a doctor. He didn't have to do that. He could have just prescribed himself something or what have you. But the whole thing behind this alienation concept is dark, very, very dark. And
Mhm.
I think of that every time I hear it used. And plus, the second you say it now, it has this reverse phenomenon. Because, before you research this weird doctor and find out where this expression came from, and you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on evaluators and so forth, the first time you say it, if you're the non-victor, the non-pre-selected victor, I was abused. My children were abused. I have documented reports. Something weird alienation. And suddenly they've got you. So they set you up to
Mhm.
experience these concepts like alienation, severance from your children, unfair, litigation. And then they wait for you to use the terms that they themselves have probably already used against you. And then the
Mhm.
second you open your mouth, they weaponize them back at you. It's really a very like artful craft that's well documented by some people, but yes, those are the three big ones that you mentioned. I'm sorry to hear that those happened to you.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
they
yeah.
were well equipped to accomplish all of that,
Yeah.
except I'm not mentally ill.
Most people aren't. I think the mentally ill ones are the people that are handing that sentence out. And
Right.
don't get me started on some of these professionals and experts like Mr. Gardner. That is a man who was able to diagnose others. Children were perpetrators of abuse against their parents who were sexually molesting them, and he's the one handing out the mental health evaluations. So yeah, those are I have all of them except alienation. I haven't been accused of that one yet. So try as my
Yes.
husband might, he just hasn't been able to push me into, the crazy behavior that is natural. When someone's threatening the
Hmm.
safety and welfare of your children. I get close, but
You know,
as soon as you do that one, yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
So do you get to see him, your son, or?
So my particular situation, and thank you for walking me through the important things that I like to try and focus on are less the horror stories, because while everything is horrific and each story is worse than the last that I hear, at the end of the day, as soon as people finally recognize that you're in a system, fair doesn't matter, and the
Mm-mm.
sooner that you can absorb that and start to strategize how to get out of it, the better off you're going to be, both just emotionally and in your litigation. So I do. My intention in coming on your show is I would like to guide people for the warning signs and talk about the
Hmm.
strategies so that they're aware of them. Surprisingly, there are so many people that are so far away from understanding what they've entered into.
Hmm.
But my specific circumstance, I guess if I had to do a warning book for to title mine would be specifically for people that live in New Jersey. Certainly, there are many, many other states, but the things that have emerged in my realization from the state that my husband chose to litigate in, I've unfortunately been drawn into a political subterfuge, collusion, corruption circumstance that's what's I'm writing bills to change legislation and so forth.
Mm.
It's particularly egregious in New Jersey, to the extent that I think something just came out today that um, was the latest expose on the internal documents that are created by the court system. They're not formed in any court of law, but they do operate with the same official capacity, a blacklist, a litigant blacklist. So
Mhm.
if you get your name, it reminds me of the movie Casino, or Al Pacino, and what's the other guy's name? You get on the
Joe
blacklist.
Pesci.
Joe Pesci, there you go. Joe Pesci's not allowed. He's on the casino black. New Jersey has one of these for divorce litigants
Mhm.
that you may find yourself on if your spouse is politically connected in any way. Unfortunately, mine was horrible, horrible political career. But in any case, if they are politically connected in any way, they're in any way affiliated with law enforcement or
Mhm.
first responders. And I don't mean to disparage the profession or, first responders, law enforcement officers. Not at all. It's, the few bad apples that unfortunately the system nurtures. And
Mhm.
then, heaven help you if your spouse is already a part of the legal community in New Jersey. Politics drive the family courts to an extent that people will be very, very shocked. So in my case, my husband was a part of the Morris County GOP, and I myself was on the planning board. My husband served as the borough commissioner of police. We're both government contractors for NYPD, the FBI, several federal, state, military, international, government contracts. So the Doge has become a very interesting agency to watch and to participate in, because federal contracting and if you've ever seen the movie War Dogs or anything,
Yes. Yep.
War Dogs, literally, I would have to say that my husband is the gentleman in that movie. My husband was born in he's a few years older than me, and so he got into government contracting before the evolution of the digital, transformation of society. So everything was, there weren't like, as many CCTV cameras. There certainly wasn't metadata. There wasn't, as much digital exposure to to the opportunity to participate in things that would not be so easy to participate in now. There are more safeguards now, essentially. So back then, I call it like the Wild West. It was like the 70s, the 80s, and government contracting was interesting. But so in my case, I've got all of these things aligned against me. So my husband strategically found probably one of the most disreputable attorneys in the history of the world. Her name is Jessica Ragnos Sprague, an attorney in New Jersey who worked. She strategically armed her career. She served on the Attorney Ethics Board. And if you ever want to know about the Attorney Ethics Board in New Jersey, I would invite you to research the history and the backstory of an attorney by the name of Kenneth Rossellini. And what happens in New Jersey. I'm actually going to give lawyers a shout here and alleviate some of the blame, but that gentleman, you'll find out what happens to attorneys when they step outside of the very strict orders and rules of how New Jersey courts and the bar associations run. You do not stand against them, or you do not survive to tell the tale.
Mhm.
So the Attorney Ethics Board, one of the biggest jokes in the world. I could go on for that for days. But in so doing, she got a great education in how to get around the system. And, she even put a video up that her former firm took down, not surprisingly, where she was, advising how to file secretly well in advance, what to do
Mhm.
with your assets, buy a house without telling, set things up in advance. And then most importantly, to make sure you choose an attorney like herself who's very, very familiar and knows the judges in your particular county or jurisdiction. I don't need to speak to how unethical and obscene that is. I mean, the firm actually even this one of the strange parts of my story is I mentioned my husband was extremely wealthy when we came together, and we grew considerably in our wealth and success afterwards. But I had a very lovely, large, had a tiny flaw in it, just like our marriage, right at the core. But anyway, he bought me a huge engagement stone. And somewhere about a year before he launched, it was the strangest thing because, I didn't wear it all the time. It was very big and gaudy, but it just I never lost it or anything. And suddenly it just sort of disappeared, and my husband's like such a money hungry kind of like money
Yeah.
focused person. He has insurance on like, his first penny that he put in the piggy bank. But it was like a several $40,000 something like that ring, and he just didn't seem to care all that much. And I thought, all right, well, should we file a police report? Should we do anything? No, 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 no. Don't worry about it. Okay, well, it'll show up. It'll show. A year goes by. This $40,000 ring is not reported to the police. Not reported to the insurance agency. Wouldn't you believe that his attorney has, her former firm has an article that I think is still on their website, what to do with the engagement ring. So
Oh.
her firm, and I'm going to go ahead and take a leap of faith here and believe that she might have participated, if not single-handedly wrote this article. Make sure you grab that well in advance of launching, because heaven forbid you wouldn't want your spouse to be able to liquidate that and then afford counsel to fight back fairly and be on an equal footing. So sure enough, my ring was stolen. It came up in court, and the judge was like, "Well, either give her the ring back or give her the insurance policy." So my lawyer, called this insurance. Turns out that even though it had been pronounced lost, my husband had called the agency and removed it from our joint policy and put it into a policy in his own name, which is interesting because the laws about engagement rings is considered a conditional gift that transfers ownership to the person
Mhm.
as soon as you say "I do." So it was mine. It's
Mhm.
not even a subject of equitable distribution. So in any case, I was like, "I'm sorry. You guys sent insurance agents and investigators out, but somehow you let him." So if I crash my car and I get it's totaled, and then I call Geico and get it insured, I'm like, "Yeah, I just got in a crash. It's been totaled. What kind of insurance policy can you give me on this crash total car?" It doesn't make any sense. So
Mhm.
my insurance ring, my husband was able to insure on a separate policy that was just belonging to himself. I secretly think there's a woman walking around out there with it. He just took it, and I don't even know. But these are the kind of tactics that you'll find from your New Jersey attorneys. And when they have a judge, I ended up in a situation where it took me a long time. But finally, about 19 months into my litigation, I realized that something very untoward was going on. I know there was a lot of bias, but when the judge was like, let's forget about the ring. No, we don't
Oh.
need any receipts for the $1.8 million cash sale of your home. We're just gonna go with, yeah, your husband took out like private sort of loans without your signature and so forth, but we're just gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. We don't
Oh.
need any receipts, Mr. Bedell. We don't want to see any paperwork. You tell us how much you want to keep, and we're gonna let you keep it. And I was like, there's something very strange going on here. Something
Mhm.
doesn't feel quite right.
Right.
So I started digging and looking into it, and it turns out that my judge at the time, a judge who's been famous on your show, Judge Peter Bogaard, was formerly a very he's had his law firm in the town that both myself, my husband, former governor Chris Christie, a lot of the fun players that are out there all live in, by the name of Mendham Borough. And Judge Bogard and his wife Lori Bogard had a law firm practice for 19 years right across from, I think it's 19 Main Street. They had it on Main Street.
Hmm.
And during his tenure as a real estate and personal injury attorney, he found himself going in front of the Mendham Council and the Adjustment Board and the Zoning Board, and representing clients in his capacity as an attorney before my husband approved things for him, and now the judge,
Ah.
interestingly seems to you know, finding favor with my husband. So this goes on and on and on, and the breaking of the law just gets more and more egregious. And I start to think, there's something very strange going on here. It turns out that the judge's wife had formerly sponsored two of my husband's electoral campaigns, if I'm not mistaken. She had Facebook messages that she posted as the president of a Republican club that they were all a member of. Come out and meet Bedell. Meet us at the Lamplighter in Chester. Free drinks, appetizers, food. Come meet our candidates. So I'm saying, I go into the court and I'm like, Your Honor, with all due respect and deference, I really believe that this is exceedingly inappropriate. And then my
Mhm.
digging led to stuff with, senators that were involved. And I was just very politely, this is inappropriate. You gave my husband a restraining order against me because I called him bad names. And, that was bad enough on hearsay
Right.
alone, no evidence. You've allowed him to take everything I own, get away with, whatever he wants, no paper, just incredibly non-appropriate judicial decision making and power, violations of every rule of evidence that I can think of. He even sort of excused, the U.S. Treasury Department. My husband and his lovely attorney presented a fraudulent P&A, which is a prenuptial agreement, right off the bat, right as soon as he filed, well in advance. And the shocking part was we never had a prenuptial agreement. And when I first heard of it, I was like, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
everyone must be mistaken. There is no prenuptial agreement. And my husband's business partner called me, who was the witness that testified against me in the restraining order for me calling him bad names. But in any case, he said, "Oh, please, Cristin, please don't challenge that." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, you are so mistaken. I'm not trying to do anything weird, but there isn't an agreement. So I think somebody must have misinformed you or something." Lo and behold, nobody misinformed anything. So I get a hold of this thing, and I'm like, "This is signed on the way to the rehearsal dinner the day before we got married, and it's not my signature. This is there's something off, right?" So lo and behold, it comes before the judge, and the determinations of a prenuptial agreement that isn't forged is it unconscionable? Was there duress? Did someone put a gun to your head? Was it signed too close to the wedding? All of these things.
Mhm.
Every single one was violated. But the judge was like, well, you lived so much affluence while you were married that I'm going to say it's not unconscionable because you could have saved during that time. So I'm imagining that you put savings away and that your husband has not stolen them. So I'm going to say that it's fine. And you know what? If you want to come back with forensics, you go ahead. He's like, because I'm looking at the signature and no, I'm not an expert, but yeah, it could be, whatever. So I'm like,
Oh.
okay, okay. So I get like multiple handwriting forensic experts, the US Department of Treasury. It's a fraud. In fact, it's so interesting. You learn this stuff as you go along. The science behind forgery. They blow it up for you, and they show you how it was forged. So the United States Department of Treasury's handwriting forensic. And did I mention that we were government contractors, and this is a complete violation of the FAR regulations? But in any case, my husband, the forger, and his disreputable attorney, um, so they blow it up and they show, well, it was so when you go to sign a piece of paper or anything, you take your pen and then you first make contact with the page. And then your name begins with an M. It
Mhm.
ends in an N. So contact with the page will be like a dot. Then you'll sign, and then it'll maybe be like a swoop at the end. It's very different. The last time you're to pen it. So they show this stuff and they show how it was signed in reverse. Then, my husband, sends my son over. My cute little son, accidentally brings his phone. I didn't want to look at it, what have you, because I thought, oh, it's probably linked to whatever. But he opens it up, and I'm like, my husband took pictures of practice signatures of the forged so there's a bunch of them, right? So then I go to the judge. I'm like, Your Honor, I've got multiple forensics. I passed a polygraph. He says, why don't we just get the attorney in here that drafted it? My husband tells the court he's dead. He was old and he died. All right. So I was like, oh my gosh, that poor man. He was so nice. We bought our house through him. I never met him before my wedding. I didn't even know he existed then. So in any case, he could be dead for all I know. The attorney, yes, Your Honor, it's unfortunate. It's very sad. He's dead. The funeral was beautiful. A couple months later, I'm like, shoot, I wonder if he's got kids or something. And maybe they kept his file. So I get his phone number and I call, ring, ring, ring. Hello? This is Raymond Londa. I'm not dead. And I was like, Mr.
Ooh.
Londa, you're alive. It's a miracle. So anyway, he was alive. The judge was like, oh, the judge confirmed that he was dead. So I've got every single circumstance in the book, every
Oh my
forensic evidence, every
gosh.
proof, and this judge is throwing this stuff out. So it takes me about 19 months. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I start to think there's something funny about this court system. So the judge, I wrote a beautiful, sweet recusal with pictures of, the senators that are involved. I'm tempted to name, but I won't. Former governor, so forth. My husband, all of them, just sort of. Turns out that my judge and the presiding judge went partying the day they let my husband abscond from Florida with my child and kidnap him to the state of Florida without a best interest evaluator. or without my approval or anything which completely violates the
Oh,
federal statutes and the state statutes. But you know what? He just figured, he's a victim of domestic violence. You yelled at him and he's in fear for his life. So
oh
I
my
think it's
God.
fine that I'm going to let him go to Florida and assume ownership of your second asset that you both have your name on. So they go. That very next day, the judge just pops over after work with presiding judge, their wives, and they're shooting, tequila and partying and martinis in hand and pictures with my husband's private investigator, the supervisor that my judge had given the business card out. And so it's just one big party fest. And
Yeah.
Brad was on a private jet down to Florida. And you asked me how long it's been I saw my child. 9 months, 9 months.
Oh,
So yeah, I moved down here. The judge told me when I asked for funds from my own escrow account, if I could please have money to. I don't want to move to Florida, but if since you let my husband take him, I can't be away from him. So can I go down? You let him leave without me. Just say, "Lovey, it was nice knowing you, Mom. I'm 5 years old. I'm gone."
oh,
So he goes, "No, I'm not giving you money to move down there to be near your child. No, absolutely not. No, you can't live on the yacht. That Mr. Bedell doesn't want that, and he's taking the house. So if you want to go down, I suggest that you get a U-Haul, have some yard sales along the way, and get enough money to get a hostel or a shack or something, and,
oh
and see your
my.
kid that way. And by the way, you're gonna need to pay for visitation because Mr. Bedell's not ready yet to be nice in any way, shape, or form." So, in order to assign supervised visitation to a person, the court is required, even in New Jersey, which is alarming. But even in New Jersey, you have to do a couple things. You have
Okay.
to show that the parent is in danger, that they are unfit, that they have been guilty of neglect or abuse or something. You got it. And then there's got to be like an actual hearing and an order that says because of this reason we're going to do this. We didn't do that in my case. I got tricked. I was, they kept my son away from me for 6 months and I was desperate to do anything. And he hands me this business card. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, I'll meet with this former GCPP lady and for a week or two. That was almost 3 years ago. So I voluntarily acquiesced to something called supervised visitation. Please, if anyone's listening to this, never, ever, ever, unless they have a police, like a warrant, an order from the court, something, don't ever voluntarily sign yourself up that you'll never get out. So
Oh,
and it becomes extremely, extremely emotionally abusive and traumatic for the child. And the court is in my emotional well-being emergent. So it's been 9 months, but they don't, Brad's attorney, she doesn't have any time on her calendar. So we're gonna have to wait until she does. So I'm about a mile away from my son
oh,
and I can't see him. And he's begging me, "Mommy, please, Mommy, please, Mommy, please."
oh,
He calls me, "Will you sneak over to the park? Will you meet me?"
oh,
Crying. It's horrendous. And all I want to do is just, call my husband and say, "What is wrong with you? Like, how do you sleep at night?" But
mhm.
unfortunately, if I do that, my husband will have me arrested because the judge gave him a restraining order. And
And
when
this
I
is
asked
Bogard.
Judge Peter Bogaard, yeah.
Yeah.
So when I asked him to recuse, I filed it on May 14th in New Jersey. You would imagine that a recusal is something that needs to be addressed right away. But in New Jersey, it says, well, the judge should get around to it promptly. It took about 6 or 7 months. I don't remember exactly. But he finally comes back and he tells me, "You've got a lot of time on your hands, Cristin. These pictures, all this evidence that you put forth. And yeah, so what? I had ex parte conversations with my wife. So what? Whatever. And, yeah, the crime fraud exception applies because your husband's story has changed 55 times and yours never has. So whatever. And yes, when I found out about the sexual assault allegations the prosecutors were pressing against your husband, I called somebody and fixed it." He said, "Mr. Bedell, by the way, there's no grand jury." So he's literally assuring a year-long investigation. The judge finds out about it, attacks me in court. It'd never been spoken of. It was completely confidential. There were pictures found on my husband's iPad of things that he did when I was unconscious, so forth. But these things had never been spoken of by me. And the judge finds out. He tells me, "You are in big trouble. I like your husband. He's a nice guy, and I
Oh
don't
my
think he did it." And I'm like sitting in court, like, this is the same place where they had the Me Too movement protests.
God.
So he goes, "You know what? If your husband's such a bad guy, if he's a rapist, of all whatever, what does it say about you? You had his kid. You married him." He's like, "I'm going to get to the bottom of this." And I was like, and when he asked me those questions, I was like, "Your Honor," he goes, "Why'd you marry him then?" I go,
Uh,
I didn't know that he was doing these things, but thank you for broadcasting this and making rape shaming me in your courtroom.
Oh,
So he
whoa.
says to me, before you go to sleep today, 4 or 5 o'clock, I want the names of every investigator, every politician. I want their contact information. And I didn't know any better that I could say, no, you can't have that. So in his recusal hearing, he tells me, yes, he had ex parte conversations. Yes, he had this person, he's been informed by an unknown higher up that this case will never leave New Jersey. And yeah, he talked to the prosecutor because he'd be derelict in his duties if he didn't. But and the did I mention that the charges the prosecutor called me, they were dropped like within 24 hours. They wanted me to do a sting. I said no. They said, oh well, all right, he goes free. So luckily there are other departments and government agencies that are going to prosecute. But in any case, the judge looks at me and he goes, it's not that I did not come to him with a recusal comprised of evidence that was sufficient to request such. It was that it wasn't substantive enough, which is not a requirement of it's not. I should have known enough from law school to be like, Your Honor, I'm sorry, you're misstating the law. That's not a requirement of recusal. So he said, I'm not going to recuse, but being the beauty of being a tenured judge is that not only did I select your case in the beginning,
Uh-huh.
not random lottery. We were selected by uh, the husband of my husband's former campaign person. But anyway, not only did I select, but I'm a tenured judge and I don't have to stay where I'm not wanted. So I'm out of here. You're never going to see me again. I'm going to transfer it to a new judge. I find out that very week that he and his senator buddies had they held a private Senate Judicial Committee meeting where they approved, outside of a regular process, they approved the very judge who I got assigned after that. And we'll go into her some other time. But um, it didn't occur to me until obviously I said substantive. What in the heck does substantive mean? And I recognized that. That led me back to now I have all the paperwork where he went before. It turns out the judge even came before me on the planning board, and I approved whatever motion it was. I had no recollection. But when he said substantive, he meant your evidence wasn't damning enough.
Oh my.
So I now have the pleasure of going back with and I'm demanding like a Department of Justice investigation. I mean, the whole thing is just one big
Mhm.
rotten mess. So if you were married to a politician in New Jersey, run. But if they
Yeah.
start doing any of the DARVO coercive sort of, moving money around, don't be in. I trusted my husband implicitly. I never questioned anything. I thought he was the beginning and the end. Don't do that ever.
Mm-hmm.
With anyone ever, because even if they are the beginning and the end and they are a sweetheart, there's a lawyer out there that's not. I
Yeah.
came to find that so my husband's a divorce attorney actually worked at the first firm where he divorced his first wife, lovely, beautiful, graceful, elegant woman, that he tried to destroy. I remember our first date, he started, yapping. I said, you know what? Go ahead and let me out of the car. Like, I'm out. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Don't ever talk badly about the mother of your children ever again. I should have known then. But they were getting divorced with a certain firm where this reputable attorney worked, and I think that's where they first came up with this scheme for the prenuptial agreement. I'm not sure, but lo and behold, years later. So he got divorced, I think in 2012 or 13. We got married in 2015. Throughout the years, I kept seeing these emails. Are you ready to get divorced yet? 2018, 2019, 2000. And then she switched firms. And I guess one day he answered back and said, why, yes, I am. Let's get together. So
Ah,
it's one big dirty nest in New Jersey. So number one, I'd recommend leave the state. They're horrible. And if your spouse is politically connected or convicted
mm-hmm.
or yeah, be on your guard and just be safe for your children. Like take appropriate steps and probably call us and consult with an attorney. It never hurts to be prepared because you
Mm-hmm.
never know what people are gonna influence your spouse or what's gonna happen.
And don't you think, even when you're dating someone, run background checks on all their family members? If you're getting serious with this person, just to make sure they're not connected in any way to any courthouse or anything like that.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
such good advice. It's just responsible. It's responsible because you have dependents, if you have children, or you have, if you own a business, people that work for you, what have you. Like, so we're all, I hate the idealist side of me says that's very unromantic and it's sad and it might be really depressing and it might seem like it's not a loving thing to do.
Mhm.
But I really think that if you can like try to rework it and recognize that the most loving thing to do is to be diligent
Mhm.
and prepared for, you never know, it might not be your spouse, you're not doing it against, you might go crazy yourself, you have no idea. It's responsible and really loving to take those precautions. It really is. And spare the taxpayers your 3 year, litigation, false allegations. False allegations are huge. The silver bullet strategy is a
Mhm.
nightmare. And there's a poor woman who quoted my judge on Facebook. She's facing 33 years in prison for quoting him on her private Facebook.
Mhm.
Actually, that's not what she's being held for now. I'm so sorry. Her prior husband is a law enforcement officer who's affiliated and so forth, and I guess he tried to allegedly strangle one of their young children or something. And when the mom reported this, he came back and said, "No, I didn't. I'm a firearms instructor. I can't have this restraining order." So they thought, well, this woman didn't take the first hint when we arrested her for quoting the judge. We're just going to go ahead and arrest her now for false allegations. She's facing a prison sentence of 33 years for reporting strangulation by her law enforcement husband and making the judge mad. Don't make the judge mad, not in New Jersey. It's
Right.
not
And
at least until our foundation
yeah, well,
ousts
there's
them all.
I've heard other people say, don't address the judge as your honor, just say judge, Judge Bogard. Well, you know what? I hate to say, but Judge Bogard is a child psychological abuser.
Among many other things.
Uh,
And you wouldn't really know it. He's so super, uh, like, I like to use the word slimy when I'm not on a podcast, but oops, it just slipped out. He's just oozes sort of confident, like almost goofy charm. So you really don't, he doesn't seem intellectually capable of half of the crimes that he has perpetrated, but yes, he certainly, yeah. False allegations, 33 years. I would love to see someone take an examination of his the things that have occurred under his watch and find out what allegations they might find fraudulent from his courtroom.
well, I think he also needs a psychological evaluation. He needs a urine drug screen, and he needs a lie detector test because to put the taxpayer through paying for someone who for to sit there for 33 years in jail to house them, what that's going to cost the taxpayer, and this poor woman needs to see her children.
Yeah, Marianne, my mom and I have followed her for 3 years now, and it's one of the saddest, most egregious things that I've ever seen. It actually, like, I have to say that actually following this poor woman and watching what she had the courage, like right now, after your podcast, I'm gonna make sure and contact the sheriffs and be on guard from like New Jersey mafia Gestapos who are gonna come down and seek revenge for this. But in any case, that poor woman, she's so tiny and so like sweet and soft spoken and kind, and she's like 100 pounds soaking wet, and they told her, keep your mouth shut or you will never see your kids again. In fact, I think the direct quote from Bogart was, you better do what I tell you or you'll never see your kids again.
Mhm.
So she quoted his words. And interestingly enough, the Supreme Court of New Jersey, shortly after that whole thing passed, they changed their policy for terroristic threats. You can't do that anymore. Bogart got the last, he was lucky. He got the last one in. So
Ah,
despite that, and they kept her in jail. This went all the way to the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, everywhere. It was, a constitutional just ridiculousness.
mm,
She spent 30 days in jail. And as I understand it, when they let her out, they gave her a piece of paper and they said, we're going to let you out. But this is a piece of paper. You better keep your mouth shut. Don't you say a word. This is a binding. And she signed, and then a little whippersnapper got back out, and you couldn't shut her up. She was everywhere. She was, I want my kids. There's abuse. This is corruption. And she would not, they couldn't. And every time they punched her, and she fell down. She got right back up. And I used to look at her and be like, oh my gosh, they're going to kill this woman.
Mhm.
And, they tried a lot. They sent her, she's a pro se litigant, Glenn Grant, who recently stepped down with his own interesting story, administrative director of courts. They have this blacklist, they have FISA warrants they issue on people. They operate like a Gestapo. But in any case, I'm not saying that Glenn Grant did. Please don't sue me, anybody. I'm just saying that the whole New Jersey judiciary needs a serious looking into. But in any case, she's on there. She called, to say, how do I file this? She contacted court user resources. She filed motions on her own, using law books at the local library. They got tired of that. They said, you know what? They sent her a letter. You are hereby ordered. You are not allowed to contact us by phone, by email. And in fact, if you want to file a motion in your divorce or your custody case or anything, you're going to need our permission through certified mail before you do so. I can't even, anybody who's been through litigation will know what that means. And that, it turns out, that's one of their favorite letters to send. But she just wouldn't stop. She just kept coming. At first I thought, oh my gosh, what is this woman doing? Like, just play the game. It really doesn't matter. You can play the game. You can not play the game. You're not going to win anyway.
Mhm.
And I guess they just got fed up. They got sick and tired. So if they finally thought, you know what? She just won't shut up. How do we get her? And this time I think they finally got her. I mean, the last time I saw her in that court hearing that was publicly broadcast and the journalist was attacked by New Jersey courts, which is unreal. I'm worried she's not going to make it. I really am. And she's given me a lot of strength watching her. I followed her, and every time I felt like quitting or I felt defeated, and I would see this tiny little thing get back up with everybody against her, right in the same town, right next to me. This whole time, we lived right next to all these years, and all she did was marry a cop, a firearms instructor, and this is what happened to her. She's not a criminal. She's a housewife from one of the most affluent counties in our entire nation. No criminal history, no nothing, never, except when she got a divorce. And now she's like America's most wanted, or I should say Bogaard's most wanted. And now, but the prosecutor was nice. They gave her an option just recently. They said, you know what? Do what we tell you. Then take this plea deal. Tell us you admit that you're guilty and that you did do all the things that we said you did, and we'll only make you serve 3 years. Otherwise, face us in court and you'll get 33. This is a sweet little sweetheart offer. The interesting part, too, that I think someone should really look into is the fact that she applied for, so in my recusal, the judge told me that his tenure allows him to pick and choose cases as he wants, which is, there's something called a duty to recuse. When it's appropriate, you're supposed to step down. And then if you don't, there's supposed to be authorities that help you do that. But even more important in law than the duty to recuse, where it's appropriate for you to not adjudicate the case, there's a bigger duty. There's a more important one, and that's the duty not to recuse. You cannot just decide, I don't like these people anymore. This guy's got bad breath. This case drives me crazy. I don't want to do it anymore. Too bad. You're a judge. You have a very, very serious duty to not step down. If I'm crazy and my evidence isn't substantive enough, he should have stayed exactly where he is. He violated so many rules. But in that hearing, he also made the statement that he has never, ever been criticized or unwanted, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, I think there are 250 people's names on a signature right now asking for you to step down from the bench. So that's not true. But in any case, this woman, she asks for a change of jurisdiction because obviously she's not getting a fair trial. So how do we do this? How do we do this? They give it to her. They send her to Essex, the most criminal place in New Jersey, basically, the most violent, dangerous offenders that New Jersey, and that's got to be a lot because New Jersey's pretty bad. They put her there, they stick her there, and then but they decide that they're just not going to reveal that they're going to do it in Essex, but it's not really a venue transfer. The prosecutor from Morris and the judges, they're kind of still, it's as dirty as it gets, Marianne. And I really pray for her every day. They have her so overly medicated that she can barely speak. And, she looks like about 90 pounds. And they took her clothes away. They had her in a cell, in a psych ward, like crying, whatever. Took her clothes away. So she's naked, about 90 pounds, never committed a crime, and drugged to death almost, alone for making a judge mad and marrying a cop. So this is a very, very serious situation, and I really hope that I hope that all of our efforts come together and people wake up and take notice, because I really would hope to find out that that woman, um, Monica Ciardi, Monica Weiss Ciardi, becomes the martyr of this movement. If she dies, I can guarantee you no one's going to forget what they've done. And I personally, single-handedly, will vow to spend the rest of my life making sure that bills are passed and this is looked into. And I pray to God every day that that does not happen. They let her out, you know. And I know there are a lot of other people fighting for her too.
Right. Right. And this is why we're doing this also because I hate to throw it back onto the taxpayer too, needs to know how their money's being spent
Yeah.
on this judge that obviously people want him off the bench and he's torturing a mother. And here you've got her ex. This is how he treats the mother of his children.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I had one of those too. He put me in jail too. So,
Oh my goodness. I know, I heard your story, and you obviously look like the most vicious, dangerous
oh,
woman that I've
yeah.
ever met in my life. All of us. We
Yeah.
should be on like FBI's most wanted. We're all killers.
Well, I had a nutty judge who probably should have had
I like your
toxicology.
psychiatric. Yeah.
Yeah.
Toxicology, psychiatric, drug test. I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah. He should have had the stuff done because as we had talked earlier, he had died of pancreatitis,
Oh my
that.
goodness.
Okay, so,
Ah.
when he was doing my case, it was like a three-ring circus. One minute we're talking about a pension fund. Now we're talking about child support. Like, why are we talking about child support? And now we're talking about child custody. It was like round and round and round. And I'm like, I think I need a drink after this. And then the judge is asking me what I'm on.
Oh my gosh.
So
I,
as a
it's like the Twilight Zone, right? It's like,
so
wait.
so as a nurse, here's Judge Robert Sambrook asking me what are you on? And I said, well, and
Where
I'm
can I
so
get
honest.
some? No, go on.
I was so honest. I said, I'm only on a 0.25 crumb of Ativan because after my shift of work, I have to fall asleep immediately, then get up at
Mm,
6:30 because that's when he drops the kids off. Because,
yeah.
why put a damper in his day? He wants those kids dropped off so he can go do his work thing.
Hmm.
And so suddenly, after he heard that, I was mentally ill too. That sealed it. So
Uh,
if a judge asks you if you're on anything, no,
oh yeah. Like,
I
I
wouldn't
mean,
tell him anything.
yeah, no. And this is ridiculous, Marianne. You know what? This is America. This is the United States of America, the greatest country in history. Our Constitution is a work of art. And our best advice as advocates and like, analysts and people that are, educating others is to lie, to participate in the system. I mean, where are we? What has happened to this country? I
Well,
mean,
yeah, I mean, I saw my ex perjure himself. He didn't even have the one kid's birthday right. It's in the transcript. It's like, anyway, I get up there and I tell the truth. I'm crucified. So I don't know what to tell you.
so my husband and I, and my like my golden palace. Everyone's like, no one understands. They're like, don't you admit? No, I would rather live under a bridge in a box than go back to my mansion of gold and my everything. That was it was. Go to church. That's better. God gives you everything you need. The one thing that was missing in my life was what I've found since then. But in any case, I'm bored to death, miserably unhappy, and I just can't seem to. So I'm like, you know what? Let me build a pool. So in 2019, I decide that I'm going to build a pool. What's my limit? Sky's the limit. It's a $500,000 pool. We've got a grotto. We've got. I mean, I don't have anything else to do with my time, and plus so whatever. So I built a stupid pool, and well, actually, it came up to 500. To be honest with you, I don't remember. I remember going to my husband and be like, did you just sign another check? $75,000 to landscapers. I was like, I swear if you sign one more check. Like, so that's what he says it costs. So anyway, it's finished in 2020, right? Okay. So we pay for the pool. And then we get divorced in 2022.
Mm.
And my husband evicts me from the home with the clothes on my back, takes my health insurance, takes my bank accounts, credit cards, retirement accounts, everything. I apparently signed in law school while I'm taking contract law, signed a contract that said, in the event of a divorce, my husband was just so wonderful that I don't want anything. I'll keep the liabilities, he keeps the assets, and we're happy. And I just signed away. So in any case, he takes everything. And then apparently in 2023, he takes out private unsecured loans for $400,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. I didn't sign them. We haven't spoken since 2022. But the judge goes, your husband says that these 2023 loans were actually 2019 loans. And I believe everything he says. And no, I don't need any paperwork or receipts. And I want you to pay for them, Cristin. So when you talk about being on drugs, like, I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, what? What did you say? I'm like, I must be imagining this. And since then, it doesn't matter. I mean, literally, I'm starting to wonder if they are on drugs. I mean, I feel like you have to be
Yeah.
to be saying this stuff with a straight face and bang slamming your gavel. You
Mhm.
have to be, but like, they really are. I think what you said in the beginning, drug tests should be a requirement, at least once a year. Personality tests, maybe. I think
Well,
AI
every 18 months. Every 18 months.
every 18 months, yeah. When you can't understand that, what do we call you? Taking cholesterol pills means if you had said that, you might have been like, I'm bipolar. Oh, wait, what am I? I'm bipolar, antisocial. They've invented things that actually don't exist in the DSM-5 for me. Apparently, there's just something called pathological lying disease. I studied psychology at Columbia University. I don't remember that one, but they all have MDs.
Oh,
They
yeah, they
don't need
all have
paperwork.
MDs. Right. Right.
Oh, and the latest and greatest is the selection and exclusion of experts that they don't like. If an expert happens to be someone who's graduated from every Ivy League school there is and is a leading global authority, no, we don't want those. They don't want those people in there. In fact, they will ban them from the courtroom. Now, some 40-year heroin addicts got a 30-hour course from Rutgers that, the judge knows personally. They will be allowed. So this whole expert selection, these business cards being handed out, that's fun. And if all that fails, you could call Jessica Ragnar-Sprague because she's a professional medical doctor evaluation report editor. So she edited medical reports. The doctor said, Your Honor, Kristen is like not suffering from anything at all except ADD, which I myself, whatever. I think everyone's ADD. But in any case, other than ADD, and her husband told me that he did all this because he was worried she was going to make a play for custody. So there's that about him. But we'll come back to her. She just edited that stuff right out. She just said the doctor said she's no harm or threat to her child. There's nothing. There's no mental illness. And the Jessica said, no, that doesn't work for me. So she just
Oh,
edited it out, put it on the court, and for 19 months, the judge was like, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. And
oh,
then in the recusal hearing, I go, Your Honor, what about the edited medical? Huh? What? I don't remember who. Who? I said, Dr. Figarelli,
oh
you,
my
you saw him in
God.
33 orders, 33 motions before the court. He couldn't remember,
Oh, yeah,
mysteriously.
he needs a drug test. It's time.
Thank you. Maybe he needs a little Ativan.
Yeah. Yeah. Help him think clearly,
Yeah,
because when you sleep
exactly.
good, you think clearly when you wake up in the morning. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, how can you sleep good when you have all this on your conscience,
Yeah,
right?
right. But I
Yeah.
think they sleep really well knowing they're destroying children's lives,
It's not
parents' lives.
possible.
Oh yeah, I mean they're sociopaths. Not all of them, but most of them are.
I like that you just said that. Not all of them. You're right. You are right. And I equate this system, it reminds me very much. I know I was talking about Kenneth Rossellini before. It reminds me of how it must have felt to be a German soldier in World War One, two, so forth. I don't think everybody was a baby killing homicidal maniac, but if you didn't go along with Hitler, they were going to kill you. So it's almost like kind of this ridiculous. These systems are designed, a lot like Nazi Germany, where if someone stands against the fray in a court, then their family is going to be the one on the chopping block. Their career, they're going to be
Hmm.
destroyed. And while that doesn't make it okay, otherwise we might have an entire country like the January 6 people. In fact, I'm starting to feel very, very similar to the January 6 people.
Hmm.
Like there's no trial, there's no jury, there's no crime, there's no evidence, and yet you are held my jail is my child. I'm being severed from him, but there's a lot of that going on. But then at the same time, I kind of sympathize. And you're right, there are judges. I just saw one the other day where I try as I might, I couldn't find anything wrong with her. She was impressive. She was conducting her courtroom according to the laws of her state and her country. So they're out there. But I think that it's dangerous almost for people to go against the system. It's a money generator, and nobody's going to upset this gravy train. Maybe Doge, maybe the current administration will have a little bit of something to say about that. So I have a lot of faith. In fact, I just heard Trump before, the other day, 2 days ago, saying that he is going to his new thing is um, dirty, corrupt politicians can't use the judiciary to stifle or punish their adversaries. I
Mm-hmm.
like that a lot. That sounds
Mm-hmm.
really good. And then he's bringing common sense back. That sounds awesome. And then what else did he say? I forget, but just everything that, free speech. Turns out it's in everyone's best interest that we not stifle freedom of press, and free speech will actually be now allowed.
Well,
It's
great. Then
phenomenal.
then Monica can get out of prison.
That's a great, yeah. I'm
Boom.
actually,
Hey.
yeah, exactly. Maybe if there's her, I bet you anything, Marianne, there's a lot more. And then you know what? Maybe when they sweep off these dirty regulations, these dirty cottage industries and bottom feeders and crazy judges, I think there may still be some in the system that are actually, they really do want to do their job. They really do want to sleep at night. They're really not demons. I think this is spiritual warfare. We're not fighting flesh and blood. We're fighting, you know, d-
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, the one good judge I had, he retired and stayed retired. He did not let them pull him back onto the bench if they were short on judges, I guess. He called
Yeah.
it quits. So I really admire him for that. And I had him for an emergency petition because of custodial interference. My ex would never show up with the kids. So my
Wow.
attorney filed an emergency petition. It was like we were running there like cattle. And once I looked at this guy, it's like, he's too good looking. I have to look down. I had to look down the whole time.
Well, where can I get one of those judges?
Oh my God, you should have heard him yell at my ex. What do you mean you don't have
Wow.
him at the door? You're supposed to have him at this certain time. Well, now I'm going to write when she's going to get these kids. He actually gave me more time.
I love it.
Right.
I
But
love
that
that
was,
would make anybody good looking.
yes, on top of that, good looking. And the thing is, we walked out of there and I was so happy. But little did I know that the ex was still going to do his thing. And and Judge Robert Sambrook was still going to allow him to do his thing.
Hmm.
But then,
Oh, so you had the good looking, like hottie judge for the
oh,
emergency order. I gotcha.
yeah, then we
Wow.
were back with Robert Sambrook, and
He
then
doesn't
God
sound like a
dealt with
hottie.
him. I know he was far from that. Oh my God. But I'm telling you, God dealt with him.
He tends to do that, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, he tends to do that. Yeah. I think the thing I tell myself all the time, people get so swept up. They're like, oh, this person should be justice. I mean, vengeance is for the Lord, and just he has a plan. It doesn't always work the way we think. Things don't happen in our timing, but just trust and faith, and
Mhm.
try to do. If you can't do the right thing, at least don't do the like really, really bad thing that you know is really, really bad. And I'm sorry, I don't care how delusional you are. These judges, I don't care how much Ativan you're taking. When
Yeah,
you're doing some of the things that they're doing, there's just no way. And I really
no.
think there should be criminal prosecution for a lot of these people. Judicial immunity, qualified immunity. I think you should step out the door when you commit like blatant,
Yes,
unbelievable fraud. I really do.
yes. I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we had this conversation. Do you want to add anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you again so
Oh,
much, Marianne. Like I talked about, there's certain people that have just like been a source of strength, and you are your show, your story, the people that you bring on, your passion. And I know that you just do this like, you don't have to. You're doing this, and I'm sure it's not always easy, but you persevere. And I really, it means so much to people that are out there that are watching. So thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak to you.
well, if anyone has any questions for you, how can they reach you?
I am launching an advocacy page with free resources and guidance in the very near future. It will be faithfirstjustice.com. You can reach me at faithfirstjustice@proton.me, or you can reach me at Cristin2024@proton.me. And that is not spelled in the usual way. Thank you, Mom, who I also want to thank. My mother has been, my mother, I have to tell you, my mother has turned into like Johnny Cochran through this. And the judge in the middle of the recusal was like, who is this person? That my mom found pictures in the Wayback Machine of Governor Christie when he was like 115 pounds, if you can believe it. So my mom is in my savior and strength and a warrior through this. But she did spell my name as Cristin 2024 at proton.me, like Mary Edward. And I would be so happy to offer any support, guidance, or direction. I just, if you're entering this and any of this sounds too surreal and nuts to be true, please just do yourself this one favor and call somebody. Call Jill Soderman. Call Marianne Slayton the Gavel. Do some research, because it really is as bad as it sounds. I wouldn't
Right.
believe it if I hadn't lived through it.
Yeah, reach out because the courts are trying to make you look crazy when they're the ones that are crazy.
Yeah.
So,
Thank
hey,
you.
don't jump off.
Okay.
Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't even know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. Thank you, Kristen. I tell you what you're going through. I'm so sorry.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you know what? We're gonna win. We're gonna change the system. Everything's perfect in God's timing. So thank you for your support, and for being a beacon of hope. It's
Thank,
meant a lot.
thank you, Cristin Badal. Thank you.